Between 2013 and 2014. My name is Rachael M. Herz. I go to Mulgrave School and I've completed this course online. So on my homepage, I thought I made a really great homepage, even though it's not really the basis for course content. I included a bunch of facts about me, talking about how I'm a lazy, overachieving perfectionist who's obsessed with university and travel and living abroad, as I have done for most of my life, and how I really, really want to go to the UK for university. I made a collage of photos here, and I also, since the beginning of the course, was managed to add in a Wordle, which basically summarizes everything about me that I talked about in the 10 facts about me, and the fact that I'm going through an existentialist crisis all the time. In Unit 1, we did a really basic test on type focus where we looked at our personalities, and I got the result of being an INTP. I don't personally find personality tests to be that which is going to indicate what you should do with your life, but rather something that's going to give you a little bit of an idea about your strengths and weaknesses, perhaps as an individual. It doesn't work for everybody, but for me, surprisingly, I was surprised. This test was really spot on. I am a perfect split between being an introvert and an extrovert, and I am 100% a thinker and not a feeler at all when it comes to making decisions, which makes a ton of sense to me because I do have a suppressive emotional nature, and I'm also somebody who rationalizes everything and has to have a reason for doing anything. I'm also, it gives you some ideas about, your values as well. So I'm somebody who loves getting awards that recognize my achievements, more or less, and I love being independent, and this is actually really useful for me for recognizing that as an independent person, I'm not great at working in groups, so I really do have to make that effort to not let my OCD, controlling perfectionist nature take over when working in a group. So this was really relaxing. It was pretty easy, simple, straightforward. And it was good. I think it was a good place to start planning 10. Unit 2, we talked about jobs, and I looked at making a cover letter for some experience, because I am applying to some secretariat positions in Model United Nations in Vancouver over the next couple of years. And the piece of feedback I got from Ms. Miller was that my resume itself should be more tailored. And rather than changing this, I decided I would use this as a base resume, but when I do apply to these jobs at Model United Nations, because I actually have relevant experience to add in there, I can add that in and just use this as a working resume for the future. I also made a Prezi, which originally wasn't that great, but I've gone back and I've put a ton of effort into really improving the Prezi. I'm quite proud of this Prezi. It's probably one of my top 3 or 4 projects that I completed now, and I'll just show you that I did make a bunch of improvements to this. So I just added a ton more information in, and so you can see I talk about a variety of factors. Okay, this isn't going to navigate great, but I talk about the salary, I talk about subfields of neurology, I look at how salary varies based on where you are, I talk about the growth and demand in the workplace for neurologists, how they do have some of the best benefits based on their specialization, but also the extensive amount of education they have to go through, basically 12 to 16 years of post-secondary education before you can become a full-fledged independent neurologist. So I'm really glad that I have left the idea of neurology being my future path alone. So that's probably one of my favorite projects that I've done, and I also, just as a side note, I know I didn't do this in the initial project, but I added in a works cited, which was quite extensive, and I just simply forgot to add it in last time. So I hope you'll take a look at that. So that's one of my top 3 or 4 projects. I also created in Unit 3, where we looked at education, a 16-minute video where I just ramble on, exposing all my knowledge about the university system in the UK from my several years of obsession. And I compared Scottish universities and Oxbridge or English universities. And I used Oxford and St. Andrews as my 2 examples. And I just talked about how I could have different options depending on where I choose to apply, and how I'm going to do that in the future. And just looking at how the application system is so different from that here, which is here in the States and Canada. And then that's probably one of my favorite projects to complete, but the actual end result wasn't amazing because I don't have much editing software on my computer to improve it. So one of my other favorite projects, probably one of my top projects, was this comic I made, which is something I've never done before, but I needed another tech tool, of course. So I made a comic where this is me, this girl here, and I'm explaining how scholarships work in universities and all the different types of scholarships and how much money you can get and what you could do to get the scholarships and when you can get the scholarships and what they can cover. And I talk about this all in this little comic strip here. The one piece of feedback I did get from Ms. Miller was that this piece of text here is a bit dense. That was a personal choice for me, just based on the fact that I do like dense information when something is slightly dull. I don't like it to be made overly cheesy or simplified when you could just go through it really quickly in one little box. But that's just a personal preference. And here I have the works cited for this, which was really brief because I do, of course, for my university obsessions, have a ton of knowledge about university, which is always useful, I think, no matter what stage you are at life, just to know what's going on, what you're looking at in the next couple of years. So that was probably my favorite unit, just because I know so much about it already that it was really easy and straightforward for me to work through. And I got to use some different tech tools. In Unit 4, I challenged the mainstream media. What I actually did, more or less, was choose a media and talk about how it's just so different from what we see on there versus what we see in a lot of other news and media. And so I chose YouTube, and I looked at homosexuality was the concept or the issue I was looking at. And it's a really big deal in the YouTube community because there are so many lesbian, gay, bisexual individuals who make these really popular YouTube videos, and they have so much support, and it's a really welcoming, encouraging community, and we all do our best to support everyone. And so this guy, Troye Sivan, came out to his following, and the video went relatively viral. And the difference between this and what we see in a lot of mainstream media, I felt, was that he actually talked about how coming out to his family and friends was a positive experience, and how he gave encouraging comments rather than saying, hey, this is a scary, horrible thing that you're going to have horrible consequences to doing. He said, it doesn't always have to be a negative experience, unlike what the media often propagates. So I thought that was something that was really different from what we see in a lot of mainstream media, even less mainstream media. And then what I did for my second video was choose this one by one of my favorite YouTubers, Philip DeFranco. And he's a huge name in the YouTube community. He's a very different style of YouTuber. He does a lot of work with news. He has some big brands. He runs some other channels that are huge on YouTube. And he is this huge spokesperson for human rights and for not having any nonsense in the world. And he, in his end of 2013 top 5 Bamps of the year, so super awesome people basically, Troye Sivan was nominated by his millions of viewers as one of these top role models in 2013 for just, being this outspoken person who is so encouraging to his followers. And I thought that was a really good show of how there is hope for the future. And I thought this was a really fun project just because I got to incorporate a lot of my own personal choices into it. And so I really enjoyed this, and I thought I was able to take a unique approach. And so this is probably one of my top 4 or 5 projects. The last project I did in Unit 4, I evaluated the websites on drugs. And for this, I got to actually use SoundCloud, which I've never used before. And so I made this podcast or narration as I went through 4 different sites about drugs, and I talked all about them. And I looked at how engaging they were, how effective they were for teenagers, how interesting they were, how easy they were to navigate, and which ones I would use in a Planning 10 course if I were the teacher. And so this is probably in my top 3 projects because I got to use a really unique tool as something I've never used before. I had a lot of fun using SoundCloud. I had never used it for myself before. I've used it to listen to stuff before, but that was definitely a really great experience and really fun. So put that in my top 2 or 3. And so that kind of sums up the majority of the work. And the last unit we did was very, very practical, looking at graduation and course planning. So of course, in the next couple of years, it's going to become very, very important that I know what credits I have and what I can use them to apply to university for. So I have actually a lot more credits than I probably need. I have 36 out of the 28 optional and a full 28 out of the 28 mandatory. And I have some other credits on the side that I actually wasn't able to add on to here. Just from a little bit of personal information. In Hong Kong, my school does a joint program between the Ontario Secondary School Diploma and the International Baccalaureate. And so we actually have a ton of credits starting in grade 9 that I can most likely draw equivalency to here for some more credits in the future. And I hope having some extra credits, I hope it makes you in the future look like a more hardworking person and more well-rounded, more informed person, because that is essentially what you get from doing more credits, and that's the only value in it. But I actually found this tool that Ms. Miller provided for us to make a graduation plan really, really useful. And so this is probably the most practical project I did in this course, and it'll definitely be something I'll be referencing back to as I make my decisions for the courses I want to take next year, although I have the general outline all talked about here. So that's the general gist of it. So yeah, my top projects are probably going to be the SoundCloud, the comic, maybe the video, and the Prezi. So those are my top 4 out of, 10. But I just want to go over the number of tech tools I've used, because I know that's a really important requirement and something I really had to focus on throughout the projects. So I used a collage here, photos. I made a Wordle here, so I'm going to count that as 2, although the collage might not count. In Unit 1, I didn't really use a tech tool. Here I just made another collage of photos and used some word art. So that was Unit 1. In Unit 2, I made a slideshow, and I also made a Prezi. Come on, computer, you can do it. In Unit 3, I made a YouTube video, and I also made a comic, so that puts us up to 6 tech tools. In Unit 4, I made a SoundCloud, and that puts us up to 7. And I didn't really use much else except for the screen recording, which puts us up to about 9 tech tools, or 8 tech tools, sorry. 8 tech tools, which is 2 more than the necessary requirements. But yeah, this is all really great for this year. And I did find Planning 10 to be a really practical course, really engaging. The work wasn't super, super fun, but it was actually not as boring as most people thought it was going to be. The quizzes are definitely something that helped motivate me to actually read and do the work because I like getting things right. And I found Planning 10 to be generally reassuring and, helped to show me that I am on the right track and that I do have somewhat of a clue of where I'm going over the next couple of years, and it'll be great. So thank you.